Let's bring in Montclair State University accounting professor Dan Geltrude. Dan, good to see you again. It has been some time. Now, tell us, should Americans be worried about this?
Worried from the standpoint of the long term. Look, the United States is not going to default. Now, the process in between now and June 1st is going to be painful. Why? Because of all the political theater that surrounds this. In the end, which again won't happen, but if the U.S. were to not pay its bills, let's talk about what that would look like. It would be no different than you or I from the standpoint of you end up with bad credit, so it makes it very difficult to borrow. And if you can borrow, you're going to pay a much higher interest rate, which doesn't serve us at all. Not to mention, if we don't pay our bills, that means we're not paying the military, we're not making Social Security payments. You'd have anarchy.
So in your opinion, we just got back from the G7 summit. You've got all of these world powers coming together. How does this make the U.S., if we can't get together and come up with a budget, how does this make Americans look on the world stage that we're days away from a default?
It makes us look ridiculous. I mean, we're supposed to be the leader in the world, right? And we can't put our fiscal house in order. So it looks terrible. And it's still, if we're going to make it by June 1st, it still has us losing credibility. Who are we to advise the rest of the world when we can't get our own act together? So this is not a positive look. The optics are terrible, and I really think we need to get our act together here.
Certainly. I want to actually take a listen to something that Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman had to say about the negotiations. Listen to this.
We're here for one simple reason. President Biden needs to consider using the 14th Amendment if necessary. The entire GOP debt ceiling negotiation is a sad charade. And that's exactly what's wrong in Washington. We're playing with the livelihoods of millions just so the GOP can just turn the screws against hungry Americans.
Now, Dan, let's just first of all ignore the fact that he's in a hoodie discussing Senate issues. But Fetterman thinks Biden should use the 14th Amendment here. Break this down for us.
Sure. Let me tell the viewers exactly what he's saying. He's saying we need to use the 14th Amendment as a credit card to get more ways to spend. That's what we're talking about here. Where we are right now, we're saying, listen, no more on the credit card, no more spending. What Fetterman is saying is, hold on, we'll use the 14th Amendment and simply just increase our credit line, get more credit cards, and keep going down this path of fiscal disaster. What's it going to take? 30 million, 40 million, 50 million, a trillion, $100 trillion before it all falls apart? We don't know, but we do know it's coming.
And President Biden, he said at the G7, he says this is still a possibility that's on the table, not ruling out the 14th Amendment. So as you mentioned, to your point, that this is something that's being highly considered. But when it comes down to it, could this not be challenged legally, though, if they did go the route to the 14th Amendment?
Of course it will. And more than likely, if it goes down that path, it'll be fast-tracked to the Supreme Court to see if it's applicable. But here's the danger. Let's say the Supreme Court rules against using the 14th Amendment. Now we're in default. So I know they're threatening that, but I actually don't see it happening, because if they take that move, it is a huge gamble that the Supreme Court will allow it. I just think that's too high stakes here.
Yeah, definitely a lot to watch here, and it seems like the sides are getting closer to a deal, but we don't know. One day they're close to a deal, and now they're far apart. Let's just hope something gets done here before June 1st. All right, Dan Geltrude, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate your insight.
Thank you.